Missouri, 2007. A group of Boy Scouts hike into the woods, laughter echoing through the forest, unaware they are about to stumble upon a horrifying secret buried in the dirt. What they discover that day will shatter a family, unravel a decades-old lie, and expose one man's chilling deception, all through the power of forensic science. This is the story of Bunchie Niehaus, a woman silenced far too early, and the brilliant forensic pathologist who helped her speak from beyond the grave. In this chilling case of betrayal, disappearance, and the perfect facade, science became her final voice and exposed a pathological liar hiding in plain sight. It was supposed to be just another weekend outing. The Boy Scouts of Missouri had come to a wooded area used for hiking and outdoor camping activities. The sun filtered through the trees as the boys played, climbed, and explored. But one curious scout noticed something poking out from the ground. At first glance, it looked like a rock, but as they brushed away more of the dirt, they saw it clearly: a human skull. Police were immediately called. Forensic teams descended on the scene, cordoning off the area, and began carefully excavating the shallow grave. Alongside the skull were several bone fragments, a few strands of hair, and tattered pieces of fabric. There were no obvious clues: no ID, no wallet, no jewelry. The remains had clearly been there for years. But somewhere within those bones was a story just waiting to be told. The remains were sent to a forensic lab, with no fingerprints or dental records available. Investigators turned to facial reconstruction, a highly meticulous and artistic form of forensic science that uses the structure of a skull to rebuild a human face. For weeks, specialists worked on the reconstruction. Layer by layer, tissue markers were added to the digital skull model. Forensic artists mapped muscle structures, eye sockets, jawlines, and finally, a face emerged, a woman in her mid-40s with defined cheekbones and soft eyes. The image was shared with local news outlets and online databases. Within days, a tip came in. Someone recognized the woman. Her name was Bunchie Niehaus. Born and raised in St. Louis, Bunchie was known for her warm nature and deep commitment to her church and community. But according to her family, she had vanished more than 6 years ago, and they had been looking for her ever since. Her husband, David Niehaus, had long maintained the same story: that Bunchie had left the country voluntarily after an emotional breakdown, that she'd taken a trip to Honduras and simply never returned. No goodbye, no explanation. Police had taken his word for it until now. Begins to unraveled. David Niehaus presented himself as the grieving, confused husband. She was struggling mentally, he told police. She needed to get away. But the reappearance of her remains in Missouri, just miles from their family home, raised immediate red flags. If Bunchie had fled to Honduras, how did her body end up buried behind a Boy Scout camp in Missouri? Detectives began reviewing everything: old reports, phone records, bank statements. They noticed something odd: Bunchie's bank account had been inactive since the day she went missing. Her passport had never been scanned at an airport. There was no flight, no departure record. And David's behavior, it became increasingly erratic. He couldn't remember timelines. His story shifted constantly. First, he said she left in spring. Then, he said it was winter. Then, he insisted she had emailed him from abroad, but couldn't produce any proof. But police needed more than suspicion. They needed science. And that's when Dr. Mary Case, one of the nation's leading forensic pathologists, was brought in. Dr. Mary Case had seen it all. But the case of Bunchie Niehaus was different. Because even after years in the ground, the body still had secrets to reveal. The first thing Dr. Case noticed was the condition of the skull. There were multiple fractures, specifically at the base, indicating blunt force trauma to the back of the head. This wasn't an accident, it was deliberate. Then came the most damning clue: her hyoid bone was broken. The hyoid, a small U-shaped bone in the neck, is typically fractured in cases of strangulation. According to Dr. Case, it takes direct force, usually from someone's hands or an object, to snap it. And here's the key part: the damage to the hyoid suggested manual strangulation, not accidental injury. In court, Dr. Case's testimony was clear and devastating. This woman did not run away. She did not leave her family or disappear voluntarily. She was murdered, violently. The injuries to her neck and skull are consistent with a brutal assault followed by strangulation. It was the scientific truth, one that David Niehaus could no longer run from. Faced with the physical evidence, he cracked. He admitted to killing Bunchie during a heated argument, claimed it was an accident, said she fell, then panicked and buried her, instead of calling for help. But no one believed it. The injuries told another story, a darker one. In 2010, David Niehaus was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. The courtroom was packed with Bunchie's friends and family, people who had never stopped searching for answers. People who always suspected the man behind the mask. And now, thanks to forensic pathology, Bunchie finally had justice. But the legacy of this case goes far beyond a single conviction. It exposed just how easily victims of domestic abuse can disappear, how manipulative abusers use lies and charm to stall investigations, and how forensic science can speak for those who no longer can. In the words of Dr. Casey, the body doesn't lie. Even in death, the human body tells its truth, and it's our job to listen. The mean of a liar. What made David Niehaus so dangerous wasn't just his capacity for violence. It was his ability to lie so convincingly, for so long. After Bunchie went missing, he didn't panic. He didn't confess. Instead, he carefully crafted a story, a lie so well rehearsed that even some of Bunchie's friends began to doubt their instincts. He told them she'd gone on a soul-searching trip, that she needed space, that she had left voluntarily. Psychologists later examined his behavior and labeled him as exhibiting traits of a pathological liar. Pathological liars differ from ordinary liars in one chilling way. They lie not to avoid punishment, but because lying gives them a sense of control. For David, the lie became a world he could manipulate. When police questioned him, he'd cry on cue. When family members asked too many questions, he'd guilt-trip them or play the grieving husband. He kept photos of Bunchie on the walls. He never reported her death, but pretended to grieve. It was all part of a long-term performance, a mask of normalcy over a deeply disturbed reality. Forensic psychologists explain that individuals like David often believe their own lies. They revise their own memories, bending facts until they match the story they've built. And that's what makes them so dangerous. They're not just deceiving the world, but also themselves. In many cases, pathological liars are only exposed when undeniable physical evidence emerges, and that's exactly what happened here. The skull, the broken hyoid, the burial site. These were things even David couldn't spin or manipulate. His lies were powerful, but science was stronger. And in the end, the truth didn't come from his mouth. It came from the bones of the woman he thought would never be found. The murder of Bunchie Niehaus is a haunting reminder that behind the calmest smiles and the most convincing stories can hide terrifying truth. It also reminds us of the power of science, truth, and persistence. Because if it hadn't been for a group of Boy Scouts on a routine hike, if it hadn't been for a forensic artist who brought her face back to life, if it hadn't been for Dr. Case, who read the bones like a diary, Bunchie's story might have stayed buried forever. Today, her memory lives on. Her family continues to advocate for domestic violence awareness, and her case is taught in forensic programs across the country as an example of how justice sometimes comes, not with a confession, but with cold, hard, scientific truth. If you found this story moving, consider sharing it. Someone out there might need to hear it. Someone might be in a similar situation. Let this story be more than just a case. It's a warning, a lesson, and a legacy. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell so you never miss another chilling true crime story. And comment below what shocked you most about this case. The deception, the discovery, or the science that solved it. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.